What's going on, everyone? This is Sherry, and you are tuned into She Said What She Said, the podcast where we interview badass women in the sports world and beyond. And we have a special show tonight. We are going to be doing a little bit of a Black History Month celebration. This actually came into my mind last year during the month of February. As you guys, if you've watched my show before, I have a ton of different types of guests, different sports, different ethnicities. I realized last month in February, all my guests were white. And I was like, ooh, oops. I was like, next year. But I didn't just want a woman that was like, oh, it's, put a Black woman on and Black history. I wanted a woman that was going to be someone that can talk a little bit more about what this month is about and in the work that someone's doing in the community. And so kind of clicked in my mind that I have known this woman since I was like 4 years old. And so we'll get into who she is very soon, but I think she's really going to be the perfect person for Black History Celebration, doing it our way. And, maybe you can learn a little bit about me when I was like 4 years old. But my co-host for this evening is Miss Kristen. Hey.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me on again.
Of course. I love having you on, and especially for this show this month. I did not just want to be a white woman interviewing a Black woman about Black History Month and being a Black woman in America. I thought it'd be great to bring in somebody else that knows a little bit more about that experience than me, and help with the conversation.
Okay. Well, I am here for that help.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Go.
So our guest this evening, we are in the legal world tonight. As we know, the legal world is where a lot of shit goes down for the better or for the worse. The legal world, the political world, and it is a place where we need to see more Black women, and more women in general, and really people that aren't white men. We need more non-straight white men in these worlds because they create the laws that affect all of us, whether we like it or not. And so the woman we have tonight, she is let me make sure I get the title correct, the Deputy Legal Director for the Michigan Department of State. She serves on their Equity and Race Task Force. She's involved in a lot of their initiatives to bring government, getting them involved with marginalized communities. Before that, she was with the NAACP for, I want to say, 6 or 7 years. And during her time at Howard Law School, she did her internship with the Department of Civil Rights, which I think is extra awesome. So without further ado, and she went to Wines Elementary, woo woo. Without further ado, Miss Khyla Craine. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
I am good. I am humbled by the introduction and the invitation. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. You've been kind of like in my mind since I started the show like over a year ago. As I was writing out people, I was like, I can ask Khyla, but I was like, I just already knew. I was like, I don't want to just pull her in just one random week. I was like, I kind of need like a reason, right? Because of your expertise, and you're so smart. So
thank you. I appreciate it. But no, you could have absolutely brought me in whenever. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. So to get started, yes, you and my sister were in kindergarten together. Yay. So this inspired my outfit. I'm wearing my sister's middle school.
Oh, that's so great.
I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, but my sister coaches track at her middle school and also soccer. My sister did neither one of those sports. Those are my sports.
Right. I was just about to say, right. Yeah.
But she's been to a million track meets, so she knew about track.
Because Sherry tore up on the track. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, I'm sure y'all know, but
we won't talk about. This is about you. But my mom was saying, because I was like, Mom, guess what I'm having? She was saying that there was a time when you guys, I think it was kindergarten or first grade, that you did like a joint birthday party or something with my sister, like next to the school, and everyone like walked over like after school to go to the backyard.
Yep.
So we're taking it.
Yeah, I was every like November, we did the play Bambi in kindergarten. It's the funniest thing. And one of our classmates' parents obviously taped it way back when you actually had like a big old recorder, because the late 80s. But it's the funniest thing to see us playing Bambi. I was a bunny, one of Thumper's friends, and yeah, it's funny. So yeah, lots of memories. Mine's elementary.
Is my sister in that video?
You haven't seen it? Oh, Sherry, yeah. We'll have to talk offline about it. Yep.
So my dad has been on this like project of uploading a bunch of old like family videos, like a private YouTube channel, so we can get some snippets. Okay, we'll talk about this next time. We're gonna hit you up with Ted, and we're gonna get Jody.
Yes.
But you are doing amazing things now. You're back in this. You were in DC for a very long time. You're back in the state of Michigan. Tell us a little bit about what you do exactly with the Department of State.
Yeah, so I have the honor of serving as the Deputy Legal Director for the Secretary of State's office, and our Secretary, Jocelyn Benson. So our Department of State is both the Chief Elections Officer for the state of Michigan, as well as the DMV, as most other states call it, Department of Motor Vehicles. And so we do both sides of the house in our department. So what I do, as you said in your wonderful intro, is I try to work through our law and policy to bring the department to all Michiganders. So I work with our Returning Citizens program, where we work with people who are incarcerated while they're still incarcerated to help them get an ID or a driver's license upon exiting their facility, because we know that being able to have an ID or driver's license unlocks so many different things that will reduce recidivism rates. So they'll be able to hopefully get housing and get into maybe an educational facility. To be able to open a bank account, you need an ID. To do so many things, you need to have an ID, a valid ID. And so we try to utilize that service, working with our friends at the Department of Corrections to do that. I also run a clinic from our office that helps people understand what they need to do to get their driver's license back if it's been suspended or revoked for a period of time. I'm trying to navigate our services. Sometimes for folks, it's just a little bit difficult. And there's been recent changes in laws that have made it a little bit easier for folks to be able to get their licenses back. So we wanted to help people understand what they need to do. And for certain people, it is really scary for them to kind of come into our office. And sometimes it is, they feel some type of way because they may have long driving histories, because they may not have been able to pay off fines or fees, and they stack, and they make their driving record, several pages long, like sometimes 20, 30. We've seen somebody with a 90-page driving record. So they're embarrassed by it. And we're like, girl, just come on in here. We'll figure it out. We'll let you know what you need to do. And so for some people, they're able to get their driver's license back right there on the spot if they pay some fines. For some people, it's longer. But either way, at least they know what they need to do. So we try to work with that. And then I have my hands in a whole lot of pots in the department, much to sometimes their chagrin. But we try to move the department forward, move our state forward, because for a long time they have not had somebody at the helm that was doing this type of progressive, not in the like Republican Democrat kind of progressive, just happens to be, right. She is a Democrat, but progressive as in forward thinking, forward moving, trying to dismantle some of the archaic kind of ways that we were doing things and bringing us really fully into the 21st century. So I'm trying to work on that for as long as the secretary will have me. And we're trying to move our home state forward, Sherry. So that's what I do.
I love it.
For people who have gone through the ID and license project, what have they shared with you what it meant for them to actually get their ID and their license? Have they ever shared how they felt, how it's helped them?
Yeah, we and it is humbling. It is humbling. Some of them are so exuberant they start dancing in the gym or where in the hallway. But some of them talk about like I'm able to apply for a job that I wasn't able to apply before because now I have a license to get to the job. Or I'm able to take my kids to school or just be free and not have to rely upon my parents or my friends to get here and there because I can take care of myself. Some people haven't had a license in like 20 years. Some people it's just a year, but either way, it gives them the freedom to do things. Me and Shay were talking before the show started about there are so many places around our country that have really good public transportation systems. Unfortunately, Michigan is not really one of them. It's hatch patch. Like in our hometown, we have a pretty good bus system. In Detroit, it's okay. In some of our more rural places, it's non-existent.
There's nothing.
Yeah. And so if you don't have a car, I mean, we are the motor state, right? So if you don't have a car, you are hard pressed to get anywhere.
Yep.
And so it's really critical for them. And some people start crying and, I can't take it. I'm a softie, even though I try. But like, it really is, it's moving for a lot of our residents.
I'm sure
I
it
love
is.
it. And when you're talking about the people when they're released from prison, going back out, my parents are involved in some of those organizations that try to help when you come out with a felon, all of the roadblocks, right, that are out there, and it's Washtenaw County, where Ann Arbor has the highest rates of, you said the fancy word, but like reincarceration.
Oh, really?
Just because I think it's such an expensive place to live, and it's like if you're released from prison, you might have to like stay in the county because of your parole, and there's this, there's that. It's like a really difficult system to deal with. I know they're involved in it from the educational standpoint, and there's like some scholarships they give working with like Eastern Michigan, and I think WCC, Washtenaw Community College. But just to hear even the simplest, like because with them I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I got it, going to school, getting this, but it's that very first step of getting a valid ID, like
yeah, and like. You do. I mean, that's one of the things that I have learned in this role is that there's a lot of things that we take for granted. Just I've always had a copy since I left for college. I've always had a copy of my birth certificate. For some people, because they're older and they may have been born, maybe they were not born in a hospital for whatever reason, segregation, whichever else reasons, they may not have access to a birth certificate. And you need to have access to a birth certificate to prove that you are a native or a citizen in the United States. For here in Michigan, that's one of the qualifiers to have a valid driver's license. Is you must be legally present in the United States, so either a United States citizen or have a green card or otherwise legally present. And I've always had that, but some people it is difficult to get it either because you're out of state or because you may not know where you were born. I mean, you might be in a foster care child or adult. And so there's just so many variables to people's lives and experiences that make the littlest things just so difficult. And without those building blocks, you can't get some of the critical things that you need, just like a driver's license or a state ID. So, yeah.
Plus, you have to get to the DMV.
There's that. There's that. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, things you really do take for granted.
I know, like dang.
Wow. So you know how right now representation matters. That's what you talk about, representation. And so who did you see growing up that made you believe that you can do what you're doing? And because now you're paying it back, or paying it forward, whatever, because now people are going to look at you and say, I can do this. Who did you see?
That's weird to think about.
And pressure. It's not pressure. Not pressure.
No pressure, but everyone's watching.
Right. Yeah. So, I was blessed. I went to and still go now to Bethel AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church in Ann Arbor, one of the oldest Black churches in the city of Ann Arbor. And I had a lot of people at my church that I was able to look up to in many different professions. I did have one gentleman that was an attorney, but sometimes it doesn't click. Sometimes you see things so often it's weird that it just doesn't click. Like, it's difficult, right? Because I'm like, he's an attorney, right? Not thinking like, oh, you have to be like this really brilliant kind of person to be this. Because I never even thought, what is the road to become an attorney? It's just like, oh, he's an attorney. Okay. So that's possible, right? Or we had a whole bunch of teachers in our church. We had other business professionals in our church. And then, just the church hierarchy itself. Like, being able to see these people, have access to them investing in me, talking to me, something that, like we were talking about before, Kristen, taken for granted. There was never a question of whether or not I was going to go to college. Like, it was what people did at my church. I mean, we had this big celebration every June about, oh, you graduated from high school, you went to Pioneer, you went to the other school across the town that we don't talk about. And so what's next? You going to college? Where are you going? And we had a list of folks that would they would be going to Hampton, they going to Michigan State, whatever. So there was never a question for me about what was next. It was just, what are you going to do when you get that degree, right? So those are the people that really inspired me. I'm also, of course, inspired by my family. I tell the story. My grandparents migrated here from the South, like many Black people coming into Michigan. My grandfather was from the Bahamas. My grandmother was from Florida. Had very little education, but was able to build a life for them and their 6 children, and provided a means for my generation and generations to come to be able to build upon their legacy. And so I really think about them often in the spaces and places that I'm in, to recognize that they had to sacrifice so that I could be here, and not to take it for granted, because it was 2 generations ago, right? Even though, my grandparents were a lot older, right? But it's still only 2 generations from the Great Migration, 2 generations from not having access to a high quality education. You're just trying to do what you can do to take care of your family. And so I try not to take for granted where I am and the spaces and people that I'm able to be connected to, because they're always in my head when I do what I do.
I've had some conversations with my mom about this. When you say like 2 generations, we're 1 generation off the civil rights movement. Like, it is so wild to, to think about. It was just our parents that, depending on our parents' age, like, Martin Luther King was assassinated during their living, breathing lifetime. Like, all these things where, when we're, I think, like in elementary school, you hear about it. It's a long time ago, right? You think it's a long time ago, right? Because it's like, that happened, but then you're like, wow, that was our parents. And then you just go back 1 more generation, right? You have the Great Migration, and then I have friends that their grandparents were like sharecroppers. Like, we're just right there. It is just wild to think of how long ago that was not.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, right, so we're talking about your sister and myself being in kindergarten together, but like, that was only 20 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated. We were in kindergarten or 1st grade. We're 20 years beyond us graduating from high school, right? So that's not that long of a span of time between those 2 periods. And I think what a disservice it is that we see a lot of those pictures in black and white. It just happens that's how they're distributed, but it may also be intentional, right? So I'm not trying to give them the pass, but if you would have those pictures in color to see that it was not like the silent pictures of the 1920s when all of this was happening, right? It was just almost yesterday that these things were happening, that they were going across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that they were fighting for basic rights for people to be able to live and breathe and just take care of their family and go to work and not be harassed, not be under the threat of harassment or death for just wanting to vote or wanting to go to the movie theater and sit wherever they wanted to. Like, we're not talking about moving mountains. We're talking about basics, right? So I think that if we had more of those pictures and images in color, people may be able to consciously or subconsciously understand that it was not the picture fading to black or fading to gray. Like, we are talking about very close proximity in time, and to appreciate it and underscore that a little bit more.
That is true. That is true. Because when I think about when I was in school, it did seem so long ago, but it really wasn't. But at that age, it also just feels so long ago. When you hear anything in the 60s, like, oh my gosh, but it was just the 80s when I was hearing about
I know, right?
But it just still seems, whoa, that was lifetimes ago, but it was not. So that is, I think you're right. The picture's color would help some.
Yeah, it's and so, you know, and again, you know, we're from Ann Arbor. It's a college town. It's generally a middle class, upper middle class town. So most people do go to college, right? It was never really like you were saying for Khyla, like, you know, and I'm familiar with your church. I know a ton of people that have gone to that church. Yeah, it was just, what do? You were in the minority if you didn't go to college. So, and most people, you know, a lot of people don't have that, right? Because I've talked to bunch of guests on the show of their first one in their family to go to college, right? So as an athlete, it's great in the sense of like, oh, you can get a scholarship for this, but they had no idea how to navigate it, right? Because their parents didn't know, so they had no guidance. So like Labrinthia, I remember her saying she ended up going to a D2 school. She could have gone to a D1, but she didn't know, you know what I mean? And it was like when the first person offers her money, she had no one to guide her on how to go through the process. Just like with me with track, you know, I had Westfield. He knew all about the recruiting game. So like I had him mixed with my parents that, you know, both have, you know, post-grad degrees. It was a very easy choice to make. But if you're coming from a family that it's even a struggle to go get a state ID, we ain't talking about college, right? We're talking about the basic essentials of how do I get my kids to school? How do I get them food? And, you know, how do I just get to the next day, right? Instead of planning for the future.
Or like, I'm gonna get you to college. You got in, cool. You got a scholarship to this place, great. Here's where you're gonna go. There's not the extra layer of like, well, what kind of degrees do they offer? Or what kind of access do they have to like postgraduate work networks? I mean, those are the little nuances that if you're not connected to the right infrastructure, you just may miss. And it's no fault of your own or whomever else's own. It's just that either you're in the know or you're not. And that's, I mean, to kind of bring it back to what I do for my job, like that's one of the things that we were having a conversation about that today in my office. Like, if you're on the outside looking in, I can't tell you what I need because I don't know what I need, but I know I need it. Right. So like you need to, you can't just wait for people to come to you and say, I need. You're going to have to go to people and say, here's what you can have. Here's what we're offering for you. Let's figure out how you get here.
And here's the roadmaps for the steps to get there.
Yep.
So you said you always knew you were going to college. How did you make your decision for Howard? With your proudly displaying on that sweater. Show everybody.
Yes, HU, the real HU, the Mecca. So I initially went to South Carolina State. I'll say this, and I say this often, that I did not choose either one of my choices for post-secondary. So my first non-choice was South Carolina State University, which is where I got my degree in nursing from. I was headed to Xavier. I knew I wanted to go to an HBCU. I went on an HBCU college tour in high school, told my mom, I came back, I was like, Mom, I'm going to go to South Carolina State. She was like, okay, I guess. And so, because my mother went to Michigan and Michigan State, so she was like, all right, I guess. So, but I was like, oh, Xavier has this pre-med program. Super excited about that. I'm going to apply. I'm going to go to New Orleans. Somebody from my church had already gone to Xavier a couple years ahead of me. So boom, we're going to do this. And my mom's like, well, no, actually, you're going to go to South Carolina State because it's close to your aunt. Your aunt lives in Atlanta. She can get to you faster than I could get to you. Being all the way in South Carolina, great. I was like, well, why'd you let me apply to Xavier if you already knew that I was going to go to South Carolina? She's like, don't worry about that, but that's where you're going. Great. So fine. I wound up in South Carolina State, had a great time. Some of my best friends I met there. I pledged, was initiated into Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So that's how I became a Delta at South Carolina State. But I also got really involved with the civil rights at South Carolina State. I was involved with the NAACP. I was president 3.5 out of my 4 years there, which is how I get to be going to Howard. Because I learned more about civil rights, much more than we learn in here in Ann Arbor. Fortunately, unfortunately.
You know what I mean? It's like you learn
yes.
the color coded, whitewashed, cute way. Yeah, you don't learn shit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, and yeah, nothing of like deep substance like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and you're done. And so, being able to like get exposed to so many different civil rights legends, I was like, okay, this is where I can make a difference in a new way. And everybody's like, you need to be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer. I'm like, okay, I could do that, I guess. So I practiced for nursing for a little bit and then applied to law school. Same kind of scenario. I was headed to Seattle to go to law school. Had already applied, got in. Then I met the director of admissions at Howard. And I was like, I just randomly saw him and I was just like, oh, I know who you are. You're from Howard Law School. You're the admissions director. He was like, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I applied. He was like, okay, I'll go back and look and, I'll talk to you in a little bit. So I wait and like 2 weeks later or so, I was like, oh, I've been admitted. Fabulous. So then I had another brother that I knew from South Carolina State. I went over to Howard to do a site visit of it. He was like, oh, you got to come, you got to be here. It's going to be great. Da, 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 da. So I did not go to Seattle. Obviously, I went to Howard. Best decision I did not make again. So, I'm striking out, but I struck big with both of my schools. I had a wonderful time at Howard, loved law school, which practically no other person living would ever say.
I was gonna say,
but I did. I loved Howard. I loved law school.
We have different ideas of fun.
I mean, listen. So you're in DC, right? So like you're gonna live it up, right? It's not gonna be. Mm-hmm. You didn't go to school, No, shout out to Iowa, but I didn't go to school in Iowa, right? Like, you have some fun in DC. I turned 30 when I was in law school, so we lived it up when I turned 30, and but I also liked law school. I liked my professors for the most part. Mm-hmm. I liked my colleagues a lot. They were great. We still are in contact with each other. And I'm a nerd. So, I just liked learning, period. So it was good. It was a good time for me. And got to intern in some really cool places, like you were talking about earlier at the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division,
cool.
The U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. So it was just a really eye-opening experience about not only seeing all these Black people in the legal space, which, like to your point earlier, we're only 5% of all U.S.-based attorneys are Black, period. Wow. 2.5 of that, climbing up a little bit, but about 2.5% of all U.S. attorneys are Black women. So I'm like a unicorn, right? But it's being able to see what you can do in so many different arenas that we got to see Black people and other people of color in this legal space. So it was really cool to participate or to go to Howard. Then once I finished Howard, I was able to work at the NAACP again, which was a good time too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's incredible. And kind of like listening to your story. I mean, I don't think you would be an attorney if you didn't go to an HBCU.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. And not only but I probably would not be an attorney if I didn't go to that HBCU. I would not have been an attorney if I did not go to South Carolina State. Um, because again, like I went to school at a place where they had an Orangeburg massacre, which was in 1968, almost 2 months to the day before Dr. King was assassinated. Young people on the campus of South Carolina State in the next door school, Claflin College at that time, um, went to protest that they could not go to this local bowling alley to participate. Like there was already a bowling alley on our campus, but they wanted to be able to go off campus to the All Star Bowling Alley and have fun. But it was segregated because it's South Carolina, and they protested night after night after night, and then the South Carolina State troopers came onto the foothills of the campus and opened fire and shot 30 students. 3 were killed, including a high school student, which is known as the Orangeburg Massacre. So a lot of people hear about the protests that happened at Kent State.
I was just about to say, you learn all about Kent State. Didn't know about this one.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, my school is already a storied place because of that. And then being able to randomly one day get a call from my advisor saying, hey, me and Reverend Jackson are going to Savannah. Do y'all want to come? As in Reverend Jesse Jackson. So I'm just hopping in the car and going to hang out with Reverend Jackson or
whatever.
Reverend Jackson, like, it's a Saturday, right? Or he'll pop in on my campus. He went to our rival college.
Oh, I was just about to ask if he was an alumni.
No. He went to North Carolina A&T State University, which is a rival school of ours. So he came on campus one day, and he had on his North Carolina A&T shirt. I'm like, sir, you can't wear that here. But underneath it, he had his Omega Psi Phi, which is like a partner fraternity of us and Delta. So I was like, okay, well, that's okay. But it's just being able to be exposed with all of these giants. I met Fred Shuttlesworth outside of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. Reverend Shuttlesworth, he was a larger than life preacher and civil rights activist in Birmingham. His house was also bombed because of the protest that he led against Bull Connor and the very racist regime that was in Birmingham. I mean, just meeting all these different people or people that may be working in the movement now, but are connected to folks from the past or just know about the history. Like the current chairman for the NAACP, Leon Russell. He's a mentor of mine. He's such a wonderful person. And I just got to know him over years from the work that I got to do. And it's because of that foundation that I am now a lawyer. Like it would not have worked. It just would not have happened if I went to Xavier. I don't think, because the stars just would not have aligned in that kind of a way. I don't think.
Okay. So you said 2.5% of U.S. attorneys are Black female. Mm-hmm. So you are Black history. So how does that make you feel during Black History Month?
Mm-hmm. I
think of it that way.
No, I don't. I'm cognizant of the stat, but I don't. What I will say is this: it gives me purpose. I'll say it that. Like, I don't take it lightly that I'm in positions that I'm in, like I said before. And so when you're sitting in the seat, you have a job to do, and it's to do your best to provide access to as many people as you can while you have the seat. And there are roles for many. I don't have to be in government to provide access. I could be very well in one of the big law firms making much more money and still being able to provide access to people. But it is not taking it for granted that you're sitting in the seats that you sit and trying to figure out how can I make the best difference with the opportunities that I have. And so that's what I try to do with my Black history, if I'm Black history per side,
Yes, you are.
You are.
Do you
You may not want to claim it, but you are.
I know.
It's very weird, but thank you.
Do you know Jamila Bowman?
Yeah. She was on the
Yeah,
check team with us. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's a attorney. She's a law professor at Georgetown.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew she was in
yeah.
the DC area, but I didn't know what
Yep.
she was doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
she ran track at Georgetown. She was an All-American there.
Of
One
course
of
she was.
my
Listen.
mentors from track. I gotta get her on here. I haven't gotten her on here yet, but yeah,
Yes.
so she's an attorney, and yeah, she actually now is a professor there. So again, it's representation. Like when you're like 2.5% of attorneys are Black women, it's like, well, I can immediately think of two person. You know what I mean? It's like I know more, but it's just from our small high school, like you and her. It's like people that you're connected with. So again, like the more you see it,
Yeah.
the more it needs to be there. And to think of her, being a professor at somewhere like Georgetown, right? I'm sure at Howard, all your professors were Black.
All mine were, but not all of the professors that are there
Okay.
were Black.
But yeah, I think of a school like Georgetown. I wonder how many of the professors of the law school there are even women, or a woman, like how many Black, to kind of get those more faces out there.
Yep. And in so many different sectors too, I think, which is what you're alluding to, right?
Mhm.
So in academia, in law firms, there's a woman, Paulette Brown, who was the first Black woman to be president of the American Bar Association. She's also former president of the National Bar Association, which I'm a part of. She's talked throughout her career about how do we get more Black women to be in and sustain in the law firm. Because the law firm life is not easy. I don't think being in the legal space, period, is not easy. It's not like if you're in government, it's like a lap of luxury, right? But it's not easy. I mean, it's very long hours. It's very demanding. And
there's a lot of the old boys club mentality still there.
And not in just like, I don't know if I'm going to give the lady lawyer this work because of blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, if I want to have a kid, I got to plan that out because I'm going to have to take time to step away, but I can't take up too much time because you want me to build and, get business and all this other things that I have to do. But if I want to have a life, if this is my vision of my life is to be able to have children, I have to factor that in on how this law thing works. And until very recently, it's not like you can get time off and that's paid. Right. So I need to hurry up and get back, which has other impacts. Now I got childcare, and it's like an extra mortgage for me to put this child into childcare. So, I mean, it's just so many different things that weigh on women of all spectrum, right? Trying to be both a mother and a career person. But I think in this life, in the legal space, it is very, there's more dynamics to it. And then for someone like myself, especially in my old job at the NAACP, I traveled a lot. And being away from home, I tell my friends, I'm like, I couldn't imagine having a child doing the work that I did because I was constantly on the go. I mean, constantly, I mean, to the point where I would talk to my mother. She was like, well, where are you today? I'm like, I really don't know where I am today. Because I'm constantly, on the go and just dropping off a bag, picking another one up, and getting ready to go back on a plane. So those types of things men don't have to think about. No, they should think about, but too many of them don't.
They don't.
Put it
No.
that way.
It's a lady's job.
Yeah, right. So it's I think that women leave, and then women of color and Black women in particular leave for additional reasons like racism and microaggressions and just not feeling like I can be my full authentic self without people like, oh, here she goes. She popping off again today. Like, yes, I'm popping off
angry
today.
Black
Getting
woman
on my nerves. Huh?
I'll say, the angry Black woman stare, like a man is
right.
What are the words they use? That he's passionate about his job, he's authoritative, he's this and that, and a woman,
and I'm crazy,
she's angry,
and I'm stretching my neck or whatever.
She's,
right.
She's emotional.
Right. No, I'm sick and tired of y'all's mess. That's what I am. I'm sick of your mess. So yeah, it's just so many different dynamics that you have to navigate. And then being one of few, right? That I'm the only Black woman lawyer in my department. And for a time I was the highest ranked Black woman in my department. And so, and in particular, like when George Floyd was killed, it was a whole thing in my office because we had to have a conversation about why we weren't having a conversation about this man being killed on live TV. And, I'm just supposed to go on with my day on the top of the fact that we're in this pandemic that was killing Black people left, right, and center in Detroit. And where mum's the word. Like that was a problem for me. We had to have a discussion about it. But I had to bring it up because we weren't having a discussion about it. So like it is going to your point, Kristen, like what are you doing when you're in the room? Because I could have just been like, I'm just gonna squeeze this stress ball and keep it moving because we don't have time to talk about it here because we are in a whole pandemic and we need to figure this thing out for blah blah blah. But no, we have Black employees that are juggling this pandemic, this man being executed, these other Black people that we keep seeing on TV being killed, and nobody being held accountable, or they're being held accountable weeks after the incident happens. And we're just supposed to go with, and then people trying to have us be in an office because they want to come and do their transactions and to cough in our face. Like you gotta put a break on here and address something. Something has to be addressed. So that was an interesting time, just being the only Black woman and one of two Black people at that very top level of the department to have the agency to say something and not be ostracized by my white colleagues, which to their credit, they did not, to my knowledge. They didn't. They were very kind and gracious about it. But that's an extra burden that we carry that if I was in a different place, I don't know how many of them would have appreciated it. Yeah.
How do you, and this can be, a question for both of you as Black women, how do you feel about being in a space where you feel like you have to educate, right? Where you feel like you have to say, hey, we should stop and, like take a moment for George Floyd, talk about this. Like, how do you mentally deal with that? Like having to explain things to people? Are there times where you're just like, I don't even fucking want to deal with these people? Really for both of you.
Go ahead, Kristen. What you got to say?
There are a lot of times like I don't feel like dealing with you because sometimes I'm afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. And then it'll just set you off. But then you also get tired of, you become like, depending on where you are, and I know you know this, Khyla, depending on where you are, you become the spokesperson for every Black person on the planet. And so, then you try to explain feelings and how you're feeling and how probably other people are feeling. And then you'll get the times where someone tells you how you should feel. If you're not irate enough to them, to people, and just some people are like, I don't think you're bad. You should be like this. I need you to not tell me how to feel and how I handle it. Because we can really be mad all day, every day. But you do have to still go on with your life. So more times you explain it, you talk about what you're feeling. In my experience, kind of speak on what I need when that was happening. During the pandemic, I was working from home. So my supervisor did like, hey, Kristen, do you need some time away from everything? And I was like, yes. So I appreciated that. She was white. And I appreciated that she did even think to like, I think you guys may need a little time away from your desk, but you do just get tired of talking about it, and just like, I'll talk to you about it when I'm ready to talk to you about it. I don't know, Khyla, what's yours? Like,
I think all the above. I think so. It's a catch-22 sometimes, almost like if you don't educate, how are people going to learn? I mean, of course, there's this thing called Google, and it's really accessible to folks. But I mean, you need like context too. So like Google can only tell you but so much. And it is helpful to hear somebody with a lived experience to be able to say, like, this is how I feel about this. I'm not speaking for all 42 million people, but I'm telling you, this is how I experienced this. But at the same time, like, Google is right there, sis. Like, go ahead and talk, and then come back to me once you talk to her. Her and me and Google, right? So, but I think it was a good lesson for me to have to speak up in that moment. It was a lesson for my colleagues to be like, they have been much more thoughtful in the years that have gone forward since that period of time to, as people continue to be killed, or other things that are happening, they have been a little bit more cognizant around that, in trying to at least speak with some of their staff about how that's affecting them. We started the Race and Equity Task Force, which has been great, being able to move policy in our department, and also trying to think more broadly about how we do our work, which has been helpful. So, I mean, but at the same time, like, there are certain times where I'm just like, I got to keep myself together. And that's about as much as I can do today. And maybe we can talk about it a little bit tomorrow. But also, like, to your point, Kristen, where it's like, I'm afraid of what they're going to say. They're also, my white colleagues have come to me, I'm like, well, I'm also afraid of not saying the right thing too. And I'm like, okay, so we're just going to have to level set here, and just, you say what you need to say. And then we can talk about how it may be inappropriate if it actually is. But like, you not saying anything is almost worse. But I'm going to bank on that you have a college degree, so you have some level of intelligence. I'm not going to say how much, but like, you have something. So like, you put those words together and let's figure this out, and then we can move from there, right? So there's just not an option not to do anything. Like, you have avenues to do something, and that's where I don't have patience. It's for just like, that's not my deal.
I mean, it's super easy to Google, like what you said, like what
make it real hard.
I'm sure you could be like, what is an appropriate thing to say to a Black person after George Floyd? Or is this, you can Google
really can't type that. You really
like, you can literally type it, and it will give you an opinion piece, or it'll take you to, or make an anonymous Reddit thing and post it somewhere, let them eat you alive, but you're gonna learn today.
Right. You'll know better.
Yeah, there are the things. The technology is a wonder, but I've been trying to give people grace. Like, that has been my mantra for the past few years. It's just like, unless like you show me that you're just absolutely disinterested, if you're coming with like a heart that is like, I just don't know. I yes, I could Google it, but I didn't find. But I would like to be more aware, more informed, but I just don't know where to start. I can work with that. I can't work.
You're a better person than me, because when I hear that, I'm like, read a fucking book. Start how to be anti-racist. Start there.
We have a whole list on that. One of the good things that came out of this, like I said, our department, we created a whole list of books for folks to read. So, I believe in reading.
I would like to see that.
I was about to say, you should share that.
I can share that. Yep. I'll send it to you. I'll email it to you. I mean, it's a long list. I mean, we put it in an Excel spreadsheet, very pretty. Like, documentaries, movies.
Ooh.
Some of the movies that I don't even want to watch, like Roots. You won't catch me watching that.
No.
No.
I won't watch The Color Purple.
Really? It took me a long time. So no shade. It took me a very long time.
Maybe by this age, but like I don't know if I can do it. And I was hoping to get my girlfriend Snacks on here tonight as well. She was busy, but we were having this conversation because a few weeks ago I had I don't know what is time. I had a woman on that she had won a regional Emmy for a documentary that was about Chicago, the housing segregation and kind of moving forward. And so I watched the documentary and I told Snacks, I was like, I really liked it. And she was like, is it different, right? Is it just another trauma dump? Because she just doesn't want to see another trauma dump documentary on this is everything that's wrong with Chicago and this is all. And I was like, it actually had a fresh spin. I like the way it moved, but when you talk about the list of the documentaries and the books, it's like, I mean, yes, as white people, we need to see this. We need to understand. They need to go, but like,
so do
Black
we.
women, how much trauma do you really need to watch and read, though?
Enough to like to get it into.
We're more than slaves. So,
but see, I have a contrary opinion about that, but I'm gonna let you go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I mean, it would just be nice to have some movies and documentaries about more than just those can still stay there, but it would be nice to just have, because a lot of young people, old people in general don't know the full history. They think some people think everything started there.
Yeah, so I agree with you with a fuller array of stories to tell about our experience. Yes. But the problem is about this the other day. Shout out to him. If we don't tell our story, it will not be told. And not only are they trying not to tell the story, they're trying to like dumb down the stories that you actually tell. That whole mess with the College Board, they should be ashamed. Ashamed. Like, y'all are the ones that put out these AP things, and then you let this man tell you to dumb it down, and you actually dumbed it down. Okay, you're about the college thing, like you're about the education thing. So like stick on the education part of it. Like, so I think that like what we were talking about earlier, Sharon and I, about our experience in the public schools here, like if I was relying upon that to understand the full history of Black people, just let's say in Michigan, not just it wouldn't be.
And this is from one of the more liberal progressive cities in the country. Like, you go through the school and you learn about Martin Luther King, but you don't actually learn about Martin Luther King, right? You don't learn about him being on the FBI's most wanted list, right? You don't learn about how he was considered, a terrorist. You don't learn actually what he stood for.
Right.
And then you also
that the man that was trying to have him killed, J. Edgar Hoover, they have a building named after him
for the FBI, and he literally he was anti-Semitic to, he founded everything, going after he hated Black people, he hated Jewish people, he hated everyone besides white men, and we still have the building in DC, named after this man who's just been a crook. He was just a crook, like all the shit. So
it's a very interesting. There's a very interesting documentary about J. Edgar Hoover and like how he became the director of the FBI, the first director of the FBI, and like all the mess that he did with Dr. King, with the Black Panther, whatever.
Yeah.
The point is that we need to tell those stories, and while, like I said, I won't see Roots because it's way too much for me. I did see 12 Years a Slave like 3 times, and I'm going to say this, and this is a podcast and you can edit it or not, but the second and third time, I was like, okay, Brad, when are you about to show up? Come on, Brad. I'm just hanging on, waiting for Brad Pitt to show up because I knew that was the end of the story. Like, It is not good because whatever. I was waiting for Brad to get there because I knew that this story was about to wrap itself on up. But the problem right there is that you think that that is the end of Solomon Northup's story. What they don't tell you is that he was recaptured and put into slavery and died enslaved. Like, that's the end of his story. So I think that it's necessary that we tell all of these stories in the fullness thereof, because our children have got, if we are to survive as a nation, we have to start telling the truth about what this nation has been and done, and to the people that it has done it to. And we don't tell our own story. We do not tell that story, and it is to our detriment each and every time that we continue to lie about who we are. Even when like things happen and like, this is not who we are as a nation. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
It is who we are.
But we're allowed to tell that story that this is not, because we don't tell the truth about what we have done.
Yeah.
I mean, use your words and say, this is not who we want to be as a nation. Okay.
Yeah.
I can rock with that, because no, we can be better than this, but we choose not to be. And we choose to lie to our children that that is not who we have been and currently are. And so that's why I just advocate for the whole breadth, like you say, Kristen, but we cannot tell the story about where we were in Africa and how we got here, because we did not come as immigrants and just decide to work for free.
No,
you know,
weird. Yeah. Right. It's and the whole thing of like who we are as a country, it's one of my side rants, and I'm sure it's your guys' beef with the whole the Confederate flag is my heritage. First of all, the Confederacy was around for about 5 years. Second of all, sir, you're in Ohio, so I don't think that this is actually even part of it. Are you aware that your ancestors were even there? But then it's also like, you can still accept the fact that your ancestors did things that you wouldn't do today and still be a good person.
And you also have to realize that you cannot wave a Confederate flag and be like, let's go USA. Those two things are like,
they literally fought. We had a whole war about it. We thought it was settled. You guys lost. You're the traitors of it. Yeah, it's my dad's grandpa fought in World War I for the Germans. Oops. You know what I mean? Like, my family history has been on the wrong side a few times. Back in another lineage, also on my dad's side, he's got answers to these things. There was, like slave owners in New England, and it's like, eek, bad. Also got a Salem witch in there. Why not? But it's
all the stories sharing.
So I'm crazy. But like, you can accept the fact that sometimes your family or your ancestors were on the wrong side of history, and you can say that and accept it and move forward. Like, I don't know, because my dad's from Germany. I don't know what his family did during World War II. You love to say that, oh, I would have tried to help as many people, I would have been super, but I don't know what they did, because he said they never talked about it. They never talked about the war. He's from an area that got very heavily bombed. Like, there's a good chance that, maybe they did some heroic stuff. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just buckled down and tried to survive and get through the next day. And that's okay. You know what I mean? We can like go through horrible things, and it's okay not to always be the shining hero and just move through it. And it's like, it's okay to accept that your relatives, weren't the ones that did that, but that doesn't mean that you have to do what they did.
Right. It's just so, like, just as an aside, funny, just a little bit, right? So before I came on, I was listening to little clips from The Office. I love The Office. Start watching it during COVID, or the pandemic. And Dwight, which is, if you have not seen The Office, the very quirky guy that's always loving on the boss, Michael, for some ungodly reason. But his family is a bunch of Nazis. Like, and they reference it like in passing, but it's just like, your family was like Nazis, like straight up. Like he referenced one time, he's like, yeah, my grandfather fought in World War II for the Germans. I'm just like, he just gonna skate right past that, huh? Okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, I guess. But like you can't your lineage, like you said, your lineage is what it is. Like you can't erase that, you can't fix that. What you can do is be better or different and move forward and own your stuff. Like that's it. Like you don't have to own what they did, but just that it existed and then move forward on it. But to say, even if you said like the Confederacy is my heritage, yes, okay, we can do that. It is also hateful. It was also created for a hateful purpose. And to deny one for the other is just not factually accurate. And it also it continues the diminishment of the people that the Confederate was trying to diminish in the first place, to say that these people did not create this whole new nation to keep people enslaved. That was the point, period, point blank. Like, but again, history and learning and education, that's why we have to have education, so that people are not talking about the lost cause. What you mean, the lost cause? Like, no, y'all should have lost that cause. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm very glad you lost.
Man, I personally am very glad that you lost it.
Right.
But,
yeah. So speaking of the Confederacy, during your time working for the state of Michigan, something else happens. Some people got to learn about some of the crazies that live in Michigan. The plot to kidnap the governor. And because this was, I'm trying to think of time-wise, you weren't back in Michigan that long before all this shit hit the fan.
About a year and change. Yeah.
What was it like working? How'd you feel? You know, you're back in Michigan, you're working for the government, you're trying to do all these things. Then we get some fucking psycho Nazi, Klansmen, whatever militia dudes that are literally trying to kidnap the governor. Take me through your mind on that.
It was wild. I mean, so I'm supposed to do my disclaimer in the beginning that like what I say is not a reflection on the secretary and the department, blah. Great, done. So but it was a wild time because of how close in proximity that I work with the secretary. Like, you know, I'm not following the secretary everywhere she goes. Like, let me not make that illusion, right? But I work close enough with her, with the secretary, to like, this is going to sound weird, but receive it with the intent that it's supposed to be given. Like, she's a real person, right? She is a real human with a real family that decided to run for office and do this job. She's not just a person with a nice picture on a poster board or your yard sign or wherever else that you see her, like in a distance, right? So it is, so it was harrowing to know that people continue talking about legacies, continue this legacy that this nation has of political assassinations or attempted, that we fail to see these elected officials as actual real human beings and not just the ideas that they have, that you could actually sit down with a group of people and plot to kill this woman because she wanted to keep y'all indoors because there was a transmittable, highly contagious virus that nobody had a cure for, didn't know how to treat, well, nothing. Because you wanted to go outside?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you wanted to kill this woman?
Yeah.
Because like not, and we're not talking about a recall election, which they actually also tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about figuring out a way to have her not be reelected. You are talking about actually trying to murder this woman for doing her job.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fact that that's where their mind went in the beginning. It's crazy. That was
wild to me. It is
solution.
wild. It is just, it is really hard to comprehend. And like there were things that happened to our secretary as well, where people just showed up at her house.
I remember
She got a
reading about
baby
that.
at home, and
Yeah.
like you're showing up at this woman's house? Absolutely not. And like people are like, well, you know, she's elected. No, she's an elected official. Her office is not at her house. Her office is in Lansing. If you want to go protest somewhere, you can go protest outside her office in Lansing. What you do not have the right to do is show up at this woman's house. Like
It's,
it is, yeah. That, I mean, that point. Sorry, but like,
no.
I really get passionate about it only because I'm like, number one, this wasn't a Michigan only story. Obviously, we saw what happened to the former Speaker of the House, her husband. We've seen what happened to other Congress people, where people are outside of their house. We saw the assassination, or actually, yeah, assassination of elected officials in New Jersey recently. I mean, it just, because people think that, like, I don't know what they think. It's like they think that they can throw a rock and hide their hand, and it's like, I'm good because she was gonna sell pizza in like whatever you think.
There's a terrible entitlement issue. They feel people feel entitled to. They show up
Yes.
at Lori Lightfoot's house all the time.
Yeah.
Like that's
It is
homes.
It is wild to me. It is. I don't know where. I don't know what vehicle that people have disseminated this thought that you can just show up because people are offering their service to the public, that everything around them is also public. Like that is not something. That is not something. And we have got to figure out, how do we put safeguards in place so that you actually have willing, competent people that want to run for elected office and are not going to be fearful that they will be stalked or shot or whatever else because they have offered themselves up for public service. Like that is a real problem that we need to address, like fast, because you're going to have a lot of good people like, I'm not putting my family through this.
Yeah. No. And the thing with that, you know, I mean, first of all, the Michigan thing, it was fucking insane.
Yeah.
But second of all, a lot of people are like, oh, Michigan, they're like that. I'm like, yeah. By the way, dirty little secret, Michigan gets real backwoods real quick. Like, have you heard of the Michigan militia? We got,
we had the Klan. Do you remember when the Klan came to City Hall?
In Ann Arbor. Yeah. There's some active Klan groups not that far from Ann Arbor. The
Grand Wizard lived in Warren or something like that for a time. I mean, not too far.
Yeah. Howell or one of those.
Yeah. I still won't step foot in Howell.
Girl, I won't either. I'm white and I won't step foot in Howell. Like how, and I was telling my mom too, like somehow even there, like legit, like growing up, if we weren't in Ann Arbor, Detroit area, or like, you know, on the Lake Michigan, pretty little towns, you know, the Charlevoix and all there. I wasn't going to other places in Michigan. I'm like, y'all done scared the shit out of me as a kid with like the Klan stuff and all this. I'm like,
I mean, there are sundown towns. There are still sundown towns in our state. Yes. And I mean, with like the work that I do for the secretary, like I tell my colleagues, that's a real thing for me. Like I have to be clear who I am in this role. So no, I can't go to every place. Or if I go there, I'm not going there by myself. Or if I go there,
and it has to be early.
I'm out of there. Like we're being very clear about this because the people that and I'm grateful. Like there are places that I never thought that I would go that I have been. Everybody has been wonderful that I've been there. Everybody has been wonderful, but everyone there is not wonderful.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so like I have to be careful. Like I can't live in this rose tinted world where I think that things still happen to Black people because we're in 2023 and not 1963. Like you just saw what happened last year. The people that just got the man that just got sentenced to life in prison without parole in Buffalo. Like this is a real thing for us. We cannot think that because we have passed through 1968 that racism is a thing in the past. It is clearly not. So, I mean, as much as I'm excited about being able to travel across our state and bringing these services to all Michiganders, because I'm very clear that I'm servicing all of our citizens in our state, our residents in our state. But I am a Black woman doing that.
And not everyone
comes
has
with
good intentions.
Extra things that my colleagues don't have to deal with.
Especially during the Trump era. Especially when it's been okay to take the hoods off.
Yeah.
Don't need to go down that whole rabbit hole, but girl, let me tell you,
we have turned the page.
Talking around
Thank you
for over an hour. But I'll tell you what, one time in college, I was driving one of my college teammates, also one of my club teammates from Belleville, Michigan, Black woman, back to Penn State. I had to pee, got off an exit that hadn't been off in Pennsylvania. Pulled up to the gas station. Nope. Turned around. I will hold that shit. I swear to God, it felt like we interrupted a Klan rally. But, just like you could just feel it. Like, the people by the gas station, the men, like the way they were dressed. I'm like, nope. I will rather piss in my car than step out of this car with her. Like, we are getting the fuck out of here. And it is like having that kind of that. It was just that instinct, right? It was that internal gut, the way the people were looking like, nope, we ain't getting out of here.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that you have to have that like click in the back of your head, just like, this don't sit right in my spirit, so we're gonna keep it moving. And
I wasn't even gonna let her say I feel comfortable. Like, no, I feel uncomfortable. So we out of here. Fuck out of here. Like, you're fine. I'm not. We're going. Yeah.
But that's the reality that we live. And what else can you do besides just be clear about who you are and where you are and move in that kind of way? But like I said, I'm very grateful for the partners that we have and the opportunities that we've been able to have. But I wish that everybody was like how they are and have been.
Yeah. So I know we've been chatting for over an hour, and I know we could chat for hours and hours, but folks got to go to bed and got to their lives. So I wanted to, I didn't get a chance to ask this question earlier, where you had talked about the Black woman that was head of like the National Bar Association, speaking on how to get more Black women and men involved in the legal. What steps? What were kind of the outcomes of those conversations? Like, what things are, what was she talking about doing to get more people in?
Well, I mean, I think it's ongoing. I mean, even, there are changes in the amount of Black women, like creating a pipeline. So there's more Black women that are going to law school. Even my school, Howard, as of right now, 68% of all of the students are women at Howard. Okay. Is that right? Yeah, somewhere around there. It's on the website, law.howard.edu. But I mean, so that's part of it, being able to change the structures in not just law firms, but other legal spaces so that women have the flexibility to be able to work in those spaces, but also have sponsors and mentors that will guide women and Black women in particular through those spaces. And when they have questions about eligibility for partnership or eligibility of counselship, or should I move from this place to that place, like being able to not only counsel them through those ideas, but also be willing to be in the rooms where they're not, to offer their name for election to partnership or election to a senior associate positions and those things, or putting them on pro bono opportunities so that they can have those opportunities that they may not otherwise have, or making sure that they're able to be at the table for bigger client projects and that sort of thing. So just being more cognizant of who and where the folks are in the room, but also making sure that the pipeline is still feeding, for lack of a better term, people to those spaces so that they have those opportunities. Along with other things. Paulette Brown is who is, and many other people are talking about it, but I specifically reference Paulette Masora as well. So Delta's running things.
I love it. So final question before I let you go to bed, because I know you're on Eastern time.
Yes. It's way past my bedtime, girl.
I know. What is on the docket for Khyla for 2023? Personal growth, professional growth.
Let's see. Personal. Just being intentional. That's my word for the year. Me and my best friend Marquita, we did our vision board, and that's my word of the year. Being intentional about all things. Saying what I mean what I say, do what I say I'm gonna do, being intentional. So and being having joy, and curating my joy and making sure being intentional about being my joy and not letting somebody steal my joy. And the devil's been busy on that one, so I'm trying to reset that this week. And professionally, just trying to do as much as I can while I can. I recognize that I serve at the pleasure of the secretary, and at any day she can be like, girl, time's up. And I'm like, well, it's been a pleasure. And so as long as I'm in this role, I want to do as much as we can, not only for our citizens, but the people that I serve with in the department. Just making sure that the quality of the space that we get to work in every day is the best that it can be as well. Because there's not been a lot of attention to that over some years. And so just want to make sure that we're trying to push the ball forward. We're one of the most public facing agencies in this in Michigan government. So making sure that we are best positioned to serve all of our residents in our state. So those are a couple of things that I'm, trying to do this year. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's wonderful to see you.
This is my birthday gift. Thank you, Sherry. My birthday's next week. So
it is.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Fantastic. But yeah, I know you and I will be keeping in touch, because we can't let another 20 years go by.
Yes. My God.
Oh, Lord. But thank you so much. Get some rest, and please email me that book list.
Oh, yes, I sure will. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye.
That
was great.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She really is. And I personally did not know about the massacre at her school. Did you?
At
South Carolina State?
No.
I gotta look that one up.
Yeah.
Because all the things that we've learned about in school and that we don't learn about, it's like, damn, that was a
unless I'm just forgetting about it, and once I start reading, I'm like, oh yes, I did know. So many things happen that it's like all of it starts to run together sometimes. It's terrible. Yeah. That's terrible that's the case at times, but
yeah, it's great. No, I learned some things today, and I love it. I love having I love that you guys both felt open to tell me how you feel.
Well, thanks for asking us how we feel. That sometimes is the beginning to most of the comment. Like, how are you feeling? Okay, let me just spill everything.
Yeah, I hear it. But yes, this is I have a work engagements next week. So this is my last show of the month.
Okay.
So I will be, I mean, I guess so funny. Like I had, I read a decent amount. Like before bed, I like to read books, and I just finished one like very beginning of the month, and so I was like, oh, let me read a Black author for Black History Month, and I realized like actually most of the books I got for Christmas were from Black authors. So I was like, oh, I actually have a great selection to choose from.
So what are you reading now?
What's it called? Harlem Shuffle.
Okay.
It's from the blanking on his name, the author of Underground Railroad, which I have not read, and also Nickel Boys, which I have read.
Okay.
I don't know. Are you a big reader?
I read a lot of murder mysteries and stuff like that. I'm big on that type of little crazy stuff like that. Yeah, so that is what I'll read. I like a lot of Dean Koontz books. So
okay. I read a lot of like either historical nonfiction or historical fiction, which does also, the whole. But again, it's that whole thing of I don't want to just read about the Civil War or read about slavery. And so my sister and I were both pretty intentional of trying to find authors with different voices. I know she's reading an Indigenous author right now. I know she'll give me that book. And not just Black authors, but actual African authors, right? So you get it from the different angles,
right.
And so you learn a lot through books. And that is kind of even though like my favorite author is a white man, I can still have that there and still enjoy a ton of. He's also written a shitload of books, and I've read them all. So
wow, okay.
You know what I mean? But it's like I love hearing different people's voices and reading. So I definitely try to, but yeah, I was like, oh, I actually have like a few to choose from this month. So actually, and like looking at my reading list from last year, it was like probably half Black authors. So I was like, I really need to make this a thing.
Right, I was about to say, so you don't really need to make that big of an effort because you do it now. It's unintentionally, you do it anyway. So
yeah, it was talking about our high school, as much as I like to read, I didn't like English class. I don't like being forced to read and that type of things, and like reading like Tale of Two Cities and analyzing it. That did jack shit for me.
Right.
So I jumped off of the AP English train in my junior year, and we actually offered African American Lit at our high school. And so that was one of my earlier introductions to some different Black authors and different books. And I don't remember everything we read, but I do know we read Fences, and I absolutely loved that.
Okay. All right.
So, just a little. But again, it's like that exposure, right? If you don't have the option to take that class, it's not there.
True. Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
So,
and I'm taking stuff like that away now.
But okay, so again, still rambling, still talking. Let me wrap it up for the evening. I would say, I know Khyla's in the back room. Khyla, I'll jump back in there and we can keep chatting all freaking night long. But we will do a quick little sign off. And on that note,
this has been a Chicago Clubhouse Network production.
Bye.